All right, good afternoon. This is Senator Ron Young. Um, we're going to do a series of Facebook town halls and probably at least one live town hall during the legislative session this year. So this is the first of those. I guess I will start off by saying that I just announced for re-election after a long consideration. Very concerned. I grew up on the streets of Frederick, and my father left home when I was 5 years old. My mother raised four of us by herself. She worked like 3 to 4 jobs at a time. Her day off was a 8-hour shift on Sunday, and we had a very difficult time getting along. I think we were poor but didn't know it. Managed to always have something to eat. My grandmother was a magician at finding things to create meals when we had very little. When I was about 10, my mother one Sunday night was taking myself and my 2 sisters out for ice cream, and we were hit head on by an oncoming car, a young GI, and my mother was thrown from the car and out on the road. She almost died. The car proceeded across the field, and my grandmother in the front seat was panicked, and I climbed over the seat and got my foot on the brake about 10 feet before we ran into a wall. But mother spent several months in the hospital. The guy who hit her had no insurance. Her insurance wasn't adequate to handle everything that happened. We lost our house, had no income for months, barely got by. Mother had to take out some loans. I remember as a kid, she'd give me $20 to take to the loan company, and I'd look at the slip coming back, and it was $19.50 interest and 50 cents on the principal. So it was a very rough time. At 12, I got a paper out and had one where I got fairly good tips. Made $3 a week back then, delivering papers. And then at about 15, I got a job. I worked 30 hours a week through school, the YMCA, at a dime store, sweeping floors for a short while at an Acme store, if anybody remembers those, grocery store. And graduated from high school. Was not a great student. As I said, I went to school and then I worked 30 hours a week and didn't do a lot of studying. My friends all went off to college. I couldn't do that. Got a job as a spot welder, short order cook, various things like that. Started community college. Long story short, 9 years after I got out of high school, I got my bachelor's degree. And by then I was a head night stalker at Safeway. And I left there and took a job teaching, took a pay cut. I got my master's very quickly. And I've had a lot of rough experiences and a lot of really, really great experiences, interesting life. And what really concerns me and helped me get to the decision to run again is, as rough as it was, the big corporations, college is way, way more expensive than it was when I worked my way through. Kids are graduating today with student loans so large that they basically have like a mortgage on a house, but they don't have a house. And they're captives to paying that off. Jobs have been hard to come by. We have an administration in there that's killing our health insurance. So I think it's even worse today. And I do think I have the time in, the experience, and the connections and know-how to get things done and help us through this period one last time. So I'm going to run again. Now, I have a number of bills I'm putting in this year, and I'll just kind of talk about a couple of them. I talked about the cost of college and student debt. One of the bills I have in is free tuition for vocational certificates in community college. I think that'll help a lot of kids like I was get a start, get a job in area of VOTEC, plumber, bricklayer, whatever, or those that want to go on to college to be able to stay home, take classes, save money, and be able to get out without owing an enormous sum. And that bill, I hope we can get passed. It may have passed last year, held it back because we didn't have a funding source. And I do have a proposed funding source this year, though I hope it doesn't get grabbed up for other things with all the financial problems. We in Maryland allow our big corporations or out-of-state corporations, and I'm talking about my bills directed towards retail, national retail chains and national restaurant chains. They transfer their profits back to their home state and pay their taxes there, and they then pay no Maryland corporate taxes, while the little store next door is paying taxes here. It's generally across the country called combined reporting, and 24 states and Washington, D.C. are already doing it. And what it means is Walmart, Target, Kmart, Penny's, Sears, any of the big stores like that will pay taxes on the profit they make here rather than back in their home state. So it really shouldn't cost local taxpayers any money. It's just collecting the taxes here rather than back in the states of the corporations locale. So that would be a great help for our young people, and it would not cost Maryland taxpayers to make it happen. For every young kid that gets a degree or certificate like that, in increased income, it pays us back like 3.7 times for what our investment was. So we're getting the investment paid by someone else, and the income and the taxes generated on that back to Maryland will be an addition for the state. I've put a bill in multiple years. I'm putting it in again this year. I hope at some point we can pass it, but it's a phase out on state income tax on seniors up to the first $75,000 they make in retirement if they make less than $100,000 a year. We have an enormous amount of seniors retire and decide if they move to Pennsylvania, West Virginia, or Florida, they don't have to pay state taxes. And that bit of savings is quite a bit on their limited income. So we not only lose that money, we lose the sales tax that they spend on items they buy here. We lose the property tax. More importantly, I think even than that, we lose the human capital. A lot of these people volunteer and coach teams, work for their church, contribute to all kinds of social organizations, and we lose that. So again, I think in the long term, it's more profitable if we can keep those people here. Many of them would be happier staying, and they would continue contributing to our community. I also have a bill in, it's actually not a bill, it's a joint resolution urging Maryland companies to increase the number of women on their corporate boards or their boards. Nationwide, about 5% of the boards have no women on them. In Maryland, 30% of the boards have no women on them. So this bill is similar to one adopted in California that has shown an increase in women on the boards. And it's not only an equity or a fairness issue, there are studies that show the Fortune 500 companies that have multiple women on their boards are more profitable than the companies or corporations that don't have them on there. So it's not only, as I said, equity and fairness, it's a smart economic move to include more women on the boards. I have a bill in, again, for Maryland independent filmmakers. We have provided tax credits to big companies like House of Cards that produce their shows in Maryland, and I've always liked that show, and it's great. But we have a real burgeoning film industry in Maryland. A lot of local actors, producers, filmmakers that want to make films here, but have to go out of state to make them because they get much better benefits there. So I'd like to see some of that money directed back to these local companies who produce local jobs and strengthen the local economy. One other bill I have in is calling slots for homeless veterans. The veterans clubs have been permitted to have 5 slot machines in it. The fraternal clubs do not. For example, the AMVETS, the American Legion, companies like organizations like that have 5 slot machines, but the Elks, the Moose, the Owls, the Orioles, the Redmen, those clubs would also like 5. So the bill would permit them to have 5, and 10% of the money off the top would go to support veterans. First 100,000 to the Veterans Administration. They do not have a well-organized method to get everything they do out to veterans. So the first 100,000 would go to setting up a much better web page, computer system, whatever, to let veterans know what they do. All the rest would go to the housing department to help provide housing for homeless veterans. So I think that would be a good bill and help the local clubs and also help veterans. I have a number of local alcohol bills, and we've been trying to modernize the alcohol laws over the years. I may try to put one in if the statewide brewery task force bill doesn't move forward. I want to do something that would keep Flying Dog here. They have been a great company in Frederick, employ a lot of people, pay decent wages, contribute to the community. They want to expand from 100,000 barrels a year to 700,000 barrels. It's a $52 million expenditure in their improvement, and I don't want to see them leave the state because they feel that the brewery laws here are too restrictive. So I'm going to be watching the other bill, and if that doesn't move forward, we'll try to introduce something that would save Flying Dog for Frederick. And in addition, every year we get local bond bills. Usually they're in the nature of $25,000 to $100,000 to help local efforts, local organizations. We've gotten a 3-year one for $16 million for the infrastructure for the city and county to support bringing a hotel conference center in. But each year we get a smaller amount. We got money to help the Historical Society or the Heritage, call it the Heritage Foundation, I believe now. We've gotten it for homeless shelters. We have a request this year for the Boys and Girls Club. We have one for the Helen Smith, moving the old Helen Smith Museum. We have one for Color Lake. We've gotten funds to help the Color Lake improvements over the years. So there are funds, in, as I said, in the order of $25,000 to $100,000 that help local projects like that. As far as the big issues are concerned, probably the first thing facing us when we get back is going to be discussion of the override of the sick leave bill that was passed last year. It's a bill that allows any employee in a company of over 15 employees to get 1 hour every 30 hours they work for sick leave, with a maximum of 5 days a year. It's felt, I don't know, if you eat out a lot, do you want the guy in the kitchen sneezing over your food as he's fixing it instead of taking a day off? Or a woman, a single mother who has a sick child and can't take a day off with the risk of leaving her job or leaving a sick child at home. And we think it's a fairness act. It's something we spent a couple of years working on, tried to get the governor's participation. He didn't and wouldn't participate at all. Now he's come back with a bill he proposed that we don't. It's more of a tax giveaway to some companies. So we're going to be discussing that override bill as one of the first things back. We're going to have to be facing issues of the consequences of what's happening in Washington and how it affects Maryland. We last year agreed to back fund Planned Parenthood if it were cut. We've voted to back fund some Chesapeake Bay funds if the feds cut it. This tax reform, as the president calls it, has a major financial impact on Maryland. We're one of the states that's really being punished by that. There have been estimates as high as costing Maryland taxpayers $3 billion. So we have to look at that. What's being done to the Affordable Health Care Act. We have to see how and what we can do there. It's forcing insurance rates to go way up with what he did. So it's almost a daily thing, watching Washington and what they're doing and how it's going to affect you, our citizens, and you as taxpayers, and us as providers, and how we can help cover the losses that occur. That's going to be a very difficult task this time too. There will be hundreds of other smaller and larger issues brought forth, and it's one of the things we'll try to do in the town halls every couple of weeks, tell you what's happening, take your questions, and hear any interest you may have. I've often mentioned that quite a few of the bills I submit every year come from my constituents, where they've spotted a problem and we try to address it in legislation or work it out through regulations or just the administration if we can. So we're always anxious to hear from you and to help you in any way we can. So at this point, if you have any questions and if you want to send anything in, we'll take them and see what we can do. All right, well, apparently we don't have any at this point. This will go up on my Facebook, so if you watch it later, and we've found that a lot of people do that, and have questions that you have, we'll be doing another Facebook Town Forum in 2 Mondays from today. So tune in then or forward the questions to us and we'll try to answer them at that point. Otherwise, stay off the roads today if you can. It's going to be rough out, so the weather forecasters say so the roads in Frederick are going to be pretty icy from noon until 7 o'clock this evening. So stay home, stay warm, and stay safe. Thank you.